Donald Double D's. Those are Pelosi level hangers. And of course, the only thing Pelosi and Trump have in common is they both wanted to screw AOC. But unfortunately, only one of them was able to do that. And the reason I'm able to show you Trump's tits and not some kind of pleasing nipples, maybe not even some nipples on some bananas, is because a certain sect of this country was activated under Jimmy Carter.
Trump is the new Adolf.
Welcome to the Chud Report. I'm your host, MJ. If you end up liking this video, make sure you hit that like, make sure you hit that subscribe, and let's get into it. An episode about Donald Trump's boobs. No, just kidding. About the evangelicals that Jimmy Carter brought into politics. Jimmy Cartier. No way, Jimmy Cartier is my coke dealer. Jimmy Carter, the president, the peanut farmer. There is little you can say negative about this man right here. He was a born-again Christian who did something rare in this day and age. He actually walked the walk. And whenever I hear someone's born again, something plays in my mind. It probably shouldn't, but I just picture them coming out of a giant vagina again as like a whole person as an adult, you know. I know that shouldn't be going on in my mind. Kind of like the nose on Double Dare. I picture the person being born again out of this fake giant vagina, and then some golden retrievers running over to lick off the embryo sac. But I digress. Jimmy Carter, a born again Christian who walked the walk. By the way, YouTube, that right there is a peach he's coming out of, all right? Not that kind of peach. It's a real peach because he's from Georgia. So don't give me a strike. It's not a vagina. And the Puritan rules that carry over onto this platform will let me show this picture. But I can't show you a vagina. But I can show you this peach and Jimmy Carter coming out of it. In this country full of fake Christians, if you ever want to know who the fake Christians are, if you're ever curious, I have one test, one fail-proof test. It's the people, it's the Christians that tell you how Christian they are. They're the fake ones. Carter didn't have too many addictions, unless you call, building homes for homeless people an addiction, but he was a cinephile. That means he liked to watch movies all the time, a large breadth of movies. But honestly, with these two presidents coming after him, I'm pretty sure a cinephile is the best kind of file you could be with giving a president that label. The first sinner cast the stone. I think that's the saying, right? It's been a minute since I got kicked out of Catholic school. Let the first sinner cast the stone. I think that was the overall theme in this board game, Jesus Rocks, that I played as a kid. Right? That awesome board game where you chucked rocks at Jesus. God, everyone played that. Carter did something else, though. Besides building houses, besides being a cinephile, besides moving his family into a dollhouse, Jimmy Carter was the first president en masse to usher in the evangelical vote, to bring that group of people into politics. Many factors played into the evangelicals abstaining from politics. One of them was the belief in separatism, kind of the reverse of, our separation of church and state. The way the radical right Christians infect our democracy, infect our government, how we want to keep that out. We want a wall in between that. Well, the evangelicals, back before they got involved in the late 70s, they believed that if they engaged in politics, it would corrupt their religion, right? Kind of the reverse. They wanted a wall coming this way. Also, many of them believed, and still believe today, I can attest to this from my own family, they believe that Christ is coming back, right? Christ is going to have a second coming in their lifetime. This theology often led them to see society as inevitably declining until the return of Christ, making political involvement seem futile at best. And they saw their role in it to convert as many people as they can before Jesus came back and only took the good people with him. Everybody else gets to stay down here. We'll have a hell of a party. And when you genuinely believe that you're in charge of saving people's souls, voting or political activism could seem secondary or even distracting to that goal. But the 60s and 70s brought a lot of disillusionment, not just to evangelicals, but to the whole country. First with, Nixon and Watergate, and then Vietnam. It's here that Carter's perceived honesty and devoutness drew in these evangelicals, right? They were looking for a trustworthy leader. It's just evangelicals. Many churches, despite being wary of politics, welcomed Carter's presidency at first. Right? Viewing it as proof that a good Christian man who believes in God could lead this nation out of this very dark period they felt was happening. And those exact sentiments, a pious leader to get us out of these dark times, they still hold true with that Republican Party as they reelected old rapey McRapey-Fearson here.
Most importantly, I brought my
Most
Bible.
importantly, I brought my Bible. It makes you wonder how we went from Jimmy Carter selling his peanut farm, the evangelicals putting him in there, to a guy that's literally selling them his Bible. In the article, The Real Origins of the Religious Right by Randall Balmer, one of the most durable myths in recent history is that the religious right, the coalition of conservative evangelicals and fundamentalists, emerged as a political movement in response to the U.S. Supreme Court's Roe v. Wade in 1973, legalizing abortion. This myth is often repeated by the movement's leaders. In 2005, Jerry Falwell, not the kid who was begging the pool boy, the daddy, the firebrand fundamentalist preacher recounts his distress upon reading about the ruling on January 23rd, 1973. I sat there staring at the Roe versus Wade story. That's not a good Jerry Falwell voice. It should be like, I sat there staring at the Roe versus Wade story, growing more and more fearful of the consequences of the Supreme Court's act and wondering why so few voices had been raised against it. Evangelicals, he decided, needed to organize. This is Falwell's recount of those events. This is probably what a lot of people out there believe. Some of these anti-Roe crusaders even went as far to call themselves as new abolitionists, evoking the antebellum predecessors who had fought to eradicate slavery. And they still do that to this day. But the abortion myth quickly collapses under historical scrutiny. In fact, it wasn't until 1979, a full 6 years after Roe, that evangelical leaders at the behest of the conservative activist Paul Weyrich seized on to abortion not for moral reasons, but as a rallying cry to deny President Jimmy Carter a second term. Now, why would they want to do that? Why would they want to get rid of this guy they so firmly supported just 2 years before? Well, I'm glad you asked, because the anti-abortion crusade was more palatable to the religious right's real motive, protecting segregated schools, Jim Crow. Like every single thing the Republican Party does, 3-card Monty right here. It's always been this way. Roe versus Wade was covered because they didn't want their white kids mixing with the black kids. In fact, in the early 20th century, abortion was primarily a concern of the Catholic Church, right? Evangelicals didn't even care until 1979, until this was thrust upon them. And the Catholics always opposed it on theological grounds. Jerry Falwell took the abortion issue as, cover. To not only go after integration into schools, but a whole concern about cultural decline. Does this sound familiar? Have you guys been engaged in a culture war for the past 10 years? Does any of this sound familiar? Rehashed, reborn, reused? Evangelical leaders reframed abortion as a key pro-life issue, emphasizing its connection to biblical teachings on the sanctity of life. The Bible doesn't say anything about abortion. This framing helped galvanize evangelical activism. Abortion became a convenient and emotionally charged rallying cry for building a coalition of evangelical voters who had traditionally been apolitical or divided on cultural issues. We are a type of democracy called a constitutional republic, right? We vote people in and they go vote on our behalf. And this is because, the framers of the Constitution, they knew that your average American, they knew what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy already know. They know your average American was too dumb and way too emotional to consider, to research, and then to vote on every single issue. What Southern evangelicals were given were a virtuous cause. We're pro-life. We're the pro-life party. It's something that we've all, whether it's cutting school lunch, cutting kids' education, letting kids go out and live in the streets once they've been born, we all saw how empty that was. But this gave them a virtuous cause to say out loud, kind of like the Christians who'll tell you how Christian they are. We're pro-life. And this allowed them to hide the very dark cause that they were actually voting for. Dumb, angry Christians looking for a purpose, looking for something to be angry at it. Carter was too decent of a man to exploit that. But you know who wasn't too decent of a man to exploit that? Here he comes. Here comes old Ronnie Reagan. And I'm not going to play the music. It's Lee Greenwald. He'll definitely claim it. Ronnie Reagan was not shy about exploiting the anger of the evangelical, exploiting the underlying darkness of what they really wanted. And it's not like they didn't know the Pandora's box they were opening, the Republican Party, when they did this. I mean, Barry Goldwater, who did shy away from his own brand of racism, he even understood the risk of what Reagan was doing, exploiting this very radicalized religious right. Goldwater said, mark my word, if and when these preachers get control of the Republican Party, and they're sure trying to do so, this is in 1981, it's going to be a terrible damn problem. Frankly, these people frighten me. Politics and governing demand compromise, but these Christians believe they are acting in the name of God, so they can't and won't compromise. Compromise. I've tried to deal with them.
Next Tuesday, all of you will go to the polls, will stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Familiar?
Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago?
Well, I guess they can't really say that.
Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? And if you answer all of those questions yes, why then I think your choice is very obvious as to who you'll vote for. If you don't agree, if you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have.
Just rehash. And the top comment on that video, those questions that Reagan quoted are just as relevant in 2024 as they were in 1980. And Americans need to ask themselves those questions on Election Day 2024. Toby's Sean, whatever his name is, these Chuds are so close. They're so close to getting the game. They're so close to understanding the game. And then they just fall short. That's what makes them Chuds. Toby Sean, it's almost as if the party has rehashed, repurposed, and reused the same thing, the same talking points for half a century. They keep reusing it because you guys never get better. It always works. The policy of the Republican Party for the last 50, 60 years is 3-card Monty. Look over here, morons. Get mad at this. While over here, we're consolidating power and we're enriching ourselves. Back to abortion being covered for the real issue, the real thing Reagan was pushing. Because they needed to pay that off, Reagan had the Senate for 6 years. He put in 3 Supreme Court justices. Guess how many times he tried to repeal Roe versus Wade? Guess how many times? 0 times. Because Reagan understood what Trump is too dim to understand is that you needed that tire. You needed that car to chase, right? To have them keep running after. He didn't want to get rid of the carrot right away. So instead they get the stick. But he did have to keep some promises. To the people in the party, to the evangelicals, to the white supremacists in the South that knew the actual game. What was under the cup? So Reagan starts with the Sentencing Reform Act that was part of the Comprehensive Crime Control Act in 1984. It established the federal sentencing guidelines, which aimed to create uniformity in sentencing, but also limited judicial discretion. This set the stage for the harsh penalties for drug offenses. Oh, and get ready, because they're coming. Just 2 years later, the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. The 100-to-1 rule, possessing 5 grams of crack cocaine, triggered the same mandatory minimum sentence, that's 5 years in prison, as possessing 500 grams of powder cocaine. It's because black people had the crack, which was probably, most definitely, because of Reagan's program to distribute crack cocaine on the streets to pay for his Iran-Contra war. I think this is common knowledge at this point. Large amount of crack, 50 grams or more, could result in a mandatory life sentence, especially for repeat offenders. Reagan used sensationalized media coverage and fears of rising violent crime, and then he sent Nancy out to stop the blow. But Nancy liked blowing. That's what everybody says. That's what everybody says. Not that kind of blow. I mean, you ever hear Chud say black people are only 13% of the population and make up 80% of the prison? Why is it? Why is it that black people are only 13%? They make up 80% of the prison. Why is it? It's their culture. I mean, just look at this. The industrial prison complex was built on the backs of black people, as the promise to the South, to the evangelicals. Between 1980 and 1990, the number of black inmates increased by 261%. 261%. How many times did Reagan challenge Roe versus Wade during his time as president? 0. How much did the black population go up in prisons? 261%. I think we know. I think we know what the evangelicals' involvement, the far Christian right's involvement in politics was about. And this would provide cover to the Republican parties, their actual intents, the 3-card Monty. This would provide cover for this sect of people, this group of people, to say that's why they're supportive. We're pro-life. We're pro-life for the next 46 years. And you can see what's happened now. Now that it's gone, we have a whole slate of new culture war issues that they introduced to us, right? Slip that under the cup. While Elon here, Musk, Peter Thiel, Vivek Ramaswamy, while they gut your freedoms, you're still looking under the wrong cup. And they tell you to your face. They tell you to your face now how dumb you are as an American, how mediocre you are as an American, how they need to ship in talent because of just how dumb you truly are. And they prove just how dumb they are. Look under that cup. Look under that cup. Kids are going to school as boys, coming home as girls. Tommy went to school, came home as Tamara. But I'm going to push back a bit. Well, I believe there's plenty of them out there that feel like they're involved in these culture wars, right? Whatever one pops up, they're ready to be on the front line of the culture war. The people feeding it to them, the people in the media, the right-wing influencers, they know the game, right? They know which cup the ball's under. And the truth is, just like abortion, they play it up to mask what's really going on. President Lyndon B. Johnson once famously said, if you could convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you're picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on and he'll empty his pockets for you. These chuds right here, they're never going to be Elon. They're never going to be Trump. They're never going to be Peter Thiel. They're not even ever going to be close to any of this. And they know it, right? But if they play the game, Elon, Trump, the whole Republican Party, they will give those people somebody to look down on. And that's all they really want. To be better than the illegal immigrant, the trans person. We're better than them. Right? And for that reason, as LBJ once famously said, these chuds are perfectly happy picking the wrong cup every single time. 3-card Monty. For a chance they would never have otherwise, to look down on someone else. It is so instinctively human to want, right? For that chance, they'll empty their pockets for this Republican Party. The Chud Report. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you to the members. I think we got some more members, actually. Get a couple subscribers back after the initial loss, after the initial purge. That's all right. I'm glad to see some people coming back. I hope you enjoyed the show. You know, make sure you give it a like. Make sure you give it a comment. Make sure you subscribe. And I think that might be all I've got for you today. Chud Report.
Smokable cocaine, otherwise known as crack. It is an explosively destructive and often lethal substance which is crushing its users. It is an uncontrolled fire. And drug abuse is not a so-called victimless crime. Everyone's safety is at stake when drugs and excessive alcohol are used by people on the highways or by those transporting our citizens or operating industrial equipment.